I talked about this topic just in terms of warming thresholds and narratives around them before. There are very nice papers by anthropologists, political scientists, social scientists about what the potential impacts could be when we keep saying these things that 2 degrees C is a dangerous warming threshold, and then we say 1.5 degrees C is much safer, and then we are going to cross 1.5 degrees C. And as I've talked about it elsewhere, 2 degrees C was not a scientifically derived target. It came out with a very empirical guesswork by Bill Nordhaus, an economist way back in the 70s. 1.5 degrees C came after the Paris Agreement enshrined the 2 degrees C warming target into its one of the main goals, because the Alliance of Small Island States said 2 degrees C is too dangerous, so let's do 1.5 degrees C. Then scientists retroactively did simulations and some analysis of past climates to say what happens with 1.5 degrees C, and a lot of stories have come since about these thresholds. But the honest truth is, we don't really have the ability to say exactly what happens when we cross these thresholds in a given location. Like in 2023, if we crossed 1.5 degrees C already for many months, does that explain all the extreme events, wildfires, floods, droughts, etc. we are having? Will it continue to happen every year if we stay above 1.5 degrees C? What happens if we come back down? So these are all difficult questions, but there is certain push to keep tracking this and making these sorts of headlines, and the news media loves this because they love exciting news, and climate change is, a perpetual news machine, and we are only happy to feed into it. So Copernicus, we'll see what that is, made a press release saying 2024 virtually certain to be the warmest year and first year above 1.5 degrees C. Are they in charge of seeing what happens after this announcement is made? What if some new president who came along said, this is dangerous, scientists tell me it's dangerous, so I'm going to control everything now on? Are we really in a position to then say, oh, no, that's not what we meant? We have to be careful, right? That's what the social scientists worry about. And as a climate scientist, I also feel that we are kind of going overboard sometimes with these claims. The Copernicus Climate Change Service C3S, implemented by the European Centre for Medium Range Weather Forecasts on behalf of the European Commission with funding from the EU, routinely publishes monthly climate bulletin reporting on the changes observed in the global surface air and sea temperatures, sea ice cover, and hydrological variables. We'll read some of the highlights. All the reported findings are based on computer-generated analyses and according to the ERA5 dataset, using billions of measurements from satellite, ships, aircraft, and weather stations around the world. Well, ERA5 is a European reanalysis product. Basically, that's a blend of a model and the data, the best dynamically interpolated gridded data with no gaps in time and space that we can have. It's not pure data, that's what you have to remember, okay? Plus, you will see here the details that temperature and hydrological maps and data are from ECMWF, Copernicus Climate Change Services, ERA5 services, ERA5 and ERA5 land, which is used for soil moisture data sets. So not everybody would agree to call them data sets, they are products, but it's a question. Is it data when you directly measure with the temperature, and then it's something else when you reanalyze it with model and so on and so forth? You decide. The findings about global sea surface temperatures presented here are based on SST data from ERA5 averaged over the 60 south 60 north domain. So it's not global. Okay. If what happens over Antarctica and the Arctic should matter, but for now let's not worry about it. Note that ERA5 SSTs are estimates of the ocean temperature at about 10-meter depth, known as the foundation temperature in the business of producing SST products. The results may differ from other SST products providing temperature estimates at different depths, such as 20 centimeter depth for the NOAA's optimal interpolation optimally interpolated SSTs. So SST definition is not unique, shouldn't take away from the conclusions here, but the caveats still remain as to what are the consequences. And remember, these are estimates. So annual global surface air temperature anomalies relative to the 1850 to 1900 baseline, which is shown for 1940 to 2024 October, and then some estimate is given for the entire year's average. The estimate for 2024 is provisional and based on data from January to October, so there's some sort of a scientific extrapolation. And this is again headline 2024 on track to be warmest year and first year above 1.5 degrees C. You decide what you want to do with it. We know that there are, the anomalies were below the baseline. If you go back in time to the Industrial Revolution, we started hopping around the zero line and then we started increasing. Of course, year to year variabilities happen because of internal variability, ocean storing some heat and releasing it during La Nina, volcanoes, glaciers melting, evaporation, all the good things. But if we do decadal averages, then each decade has been warmer than the one before since about the 1990s. So there is no doubt that climate is warming. So there's really not much scientific debate. It's just about what it all means for society when we say this. For example, according to Samantha Burgess, Deputy Director of the Copernicus Climate Change Service, after 10 months of 2024, it's now virtually certain that 2024 will be the warmest year on record, which is one thing, and then the first year of more than 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels, according to the ERA 5 dataset. This marks a new milestone in global temperature records and should serve as a catalyst to raise ambition for the upcoming climate change conference COP29 in Baku. Azerbaijan, I think. You can check it. So there is a motivation probably for doing this, saying just before COP29 starts, let's make a scientific conjecture about pushing the delegates to worry about this. And the 4 stars we'll see here in one of the lines on one of the highlights of October 2024 is that data sets from data sets other than ERA 5 may not confirm the 15-month above 1.5 degrees C highlighted here. Due to the relatively small margins above 1.5 degrees C of ERA 5 global temperatures observed for several months and differences among the various data sets. So this scientific conjecture has further caveats that this product is saying something but it doesn't agree with all the other products. So should we go ahead and say it anyway? Is it the end that justifies the means approach? What are the consequences? So that's all something you have to worry about. Just to conclude with a few highlights, October 2024 surface air temperatures and sea surface temperature highlights for the global story. October 2024 was the second warmest October globally after October 2023, and I won't read the numbers, but 2023 was very warm, record warm. It was global warming plus El Nino, and we think other factors may have played a role, like the underwater volcano Tonga that went off in the Pacific in 2022 and is expected to affect weather for many years because it throws up a lot of water. It threw up a lot of water vapor into the upper atmosphere, which is a strong greenhouse gas. October 2024 was 1.65 degrees C above the pre-industrial level and was the 15th month in a 16-month period for which the global average surface air temperatures exceeded 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels, and the 4 stars there are corresponding to the fact that other products again disagree, right? And so on. Given that 2023 was 1.48 degrees C above the pre-industrial level, according to ERA 5, it's likely it is likewise virtually certain that the annual temperature for 2024 from era 5 will be more than 1.5 degrees C above the pre-industrial level, and likely that it will be more than 1.55 degrees C above. You do what you want with it. There are some details of the European regions, as we'll see a map. There are very strong patterns to this global warming. Global warming is a good number to track, energy we are trapping, but patterns matter because there can be positive and negative feedbacks to local scale impacts based on what's happening locally, right? So temperatures were most notably below average over central England and central Greenland and Iceland. India was also colder than normal for 2023, but this is for October 2024. So when you just look at 1 month, you expect such regional patterns, but even average over 2023, the regional patterns are very strong. Okay, India was notably cool, for example. Sea surface temperatures, remembering the caveat about 10 meter versus other products. The average sea surface temperature for October 2024 was, over 60 south, 60 north was 20.68 degrees C, the second highest value on record for the month, and only 0.1 degrees C below October 2023. So October 2023 was in the middle of a strong El Nino plus global warming, and we were expecting a La Nina seemed to emerge, and then actually hasn't made an appearance yet, which would have reduced the temperatures further, as we will see, which is shown here. The equatorial, eastern and central Pacific had below average temperatures, indicating a move towards La Nina conditions, but SSTs across the ocean remained unusually high over many regions. Okay, so remember 2023 El Nino was forecasted very well in spring itself, which is usually a difficult time to do predictions. Similar confidence was shown in a La Nina prediction in 2024, but has turned out to be not a very good forecast, right? So it is one thing to predict phenomena, large scale dominant phenomenon like El Nino and La Nina, and then to translate those into local impacts, and then to put these in this context of 1.5 degrees C. What was related to El Nino, why La Nina didn't happen, what the local impacts were Spanish floods or Indian landslides related to 1.5 degrees C crossing, or some version of El Nino La Nina impact. So many questions come to mind, right? But monthly global surface air temperature are normally seen for the year 2023 jumped out of all the years since 1940 for sure. 2024 started to head down because El Nino is finished, warm water is discharged, La Nina seems to be appearing, which means more heat will go into the ocean, but then La Nina didn't happen and October is headed back up, and the guesswork is that 2024 as a whole is going to be again above 1.5 degrees C. Okay, so 2023 as a whole was 1.48, and 2024 is being conjectured to cross 1.5. So sea ice highlights again reinforce the fact that local patterns matter. For October, Arctic sea ice reached its fourth lowest monthly extent for October at 19% below average. So even if we crossed 1.5 degrees C, Arctic may not see the record low sea ice because something else is happening. Right, all these things we have to keep in mind. And if you look at the anomalies and extremes in sea surface temperatures in October 2024, just October 2024, the coolest ones in dark blue colors and warmest ones here, for example, and again, all the usual patterns, El Nino, La Nina like, but didn't quite congeal into a La Nina, and these warm temperatures have persisted. Why this is so warm will be reported very soon, I'm sure. The Indian monsoon turned out to be normal, I think maybe even above normal if I'm not mistaken by now. But October rainfalls continued to be weird, and cross-equatorial winds, which should have died away after summer monsoon in September withdraws, continued and produced some upwelling and cool temperatures here. Okay, so these regional patterns do matter, and we don't know always what else they do. And there is an argument being made that this kind of a east-west pattern here may have been responsible for producing some winds in the deep equatorial Pacific on the western side and suppress the evolution of a strong La Nina. It's called the ENSO transition mode that I have talked about elsewhere. So we don't know whether this mode is low frequency mode that has survived the record warming of 23-24 and still managed to do its thing with the El Nino transition, or it also got influenced by the record warming. So lots of questions there. Okay, so hydrological variables again, October 24 saw above average precipitation across the Iberian Peninsula, France, northern Italy, Norway, northern Sweden and east of the Black Sea. Heavy precipitation led to severe flash flooding in the region of Valencia, Spain, with over 200 fatalities, left some really horrific figures, which images, which is going to keep them awake for many years. And then the question is, what do we do with that? Can we start building adaptation and resilience based on these experiences? And when will such a flood happen again here? Was it related to crossing 1.5 degrees C? Was it predicted? If it was predicted, why did so many people still die? What are the last mile gaps in converting early warning systems into action on the ground? All these are very difficult questions, right? So drier than average conditions were seen across most of the United States. Going to the other end, the central lowlands of Australia, much of southern Africa and Madagascar, and parts of Argentina and Chile. Ongoing drought across the United States is affecting a record number of people. The hurricane season was argued to be the worst in decades, but didn't turn out to be so bad so far. Okay, of course, any hurricane is a bad one, but when we make forecasts again, are we leaning towards alarmist messages? Is that meant to accomplish something like influence COP29 discussions? Is that a good idea to do that? Provide scientific conjectures ahead of time saying that will motivate discussions? What about credibility? So these are very important questions. I'm a climate scientist and I worry about these things because I'm heavily influenced by the anthropologists and social scientists, which discuss all aspects of what can happen with these claims that we make that is a little bit ahead of science, right? Science is saying something and we are taking a step further and saying we expect 2024 to cross the 1.5 degrees C threshold, and we don't say what that will mean for Valencia next year, right? So these are tricky issues. It's a challenge, but you have to decide for yourself how you take these things. But my main goal is to say, when you see headlines, news media does its job, we are doing something, and we have to be aware of what the potential unintended consequences could be. Okay, so with that polemic, my advisor tells me I always am full of polemic, and he doesn't like polemic. Well, sitting in India, I am always worried about the claims that are not always completely scientific. Some value addition is done, and it's mostly coming from the Western world, and then we have to determine for ourselves what we want to do with it, and that can be very tricky. Okay, so let's leave it here.